Honestly, no disappointment. Like, I think it just gives you something to work for. That's a dream. Hopefully one day I can be there.
Because you're on the committee, so how do you not have no power on it? Let's dive a little deeper into this article. Team USA head coach Cheryl Reeve.
Picture this. You're Cheryl Reeve, coaching the best women's basketball team in the world. Everyone's asking why you didn't pick Caitlyn Clark for the Olympics. But here's the thing, you didn't even get to make that choice. Sounds unbelievable, right? Well, that's exactly what Reeve just revealed. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now back to the video. Fans are going crazy. They thought the coach picked the team, but nope. Reeve dropped a bomb when she said she had no power in leaving Clark off the roster. Can you imagine the shock? It's like finding out your favorite player isn't actually calling the shots. But here's why this is huge. Clark isn't just any player. She's the future of women's basketball. Not having her on the Olympic team, that's like leaving LeBron off Team USA. It's got everyone wondering, what's really going on behind the scenes? And how will this affect Clark's career and the future of the sport? Trust me, there's way more to this story than meets the eye. Here's where things get crazy. Remember how we thought coaches picked Olympic teams? Well, that's not even close to how it works. The real process is so different, it might explain why superstars like Clark get left behind. And trust me, once you hear this, you'll see women's basketball in a whole new light. So who's really pulling the strings? It's not Cheryl Reeve, that's for sure. The selection committee, led by Jen Rizzotti, is the real powerhouse behind Team USA. They're the ones making the tough calls, and their decisions are based on way more than just who's hot right now. Rizzotti dropped a truth bomb that's got everyone talking. She said, "It would be irresponsible for us to talk about her in a way other than how she would impact the play of the team." That's right. They're not looking at Twitter followers or jersey sales. It's all about what happens on the court. But here's the kicker. Reeve, the coach we all thought was calling the shots, barely has a say in who makes the cut. She even admitted that in past selections, players she wanted got overlooked.
She had no power over Caitlyn Clark's U.S. Olympic roster decision. That is what she's coming out and saying.
Can you imagine being the coach and not getting to pick your team? That's like being the captain of a ship but not choosing your crew. Now, you might be thinking, but Caitlyn Clark is amazing. How could they not pick her? Well, that's where things get complicated. The committee isn't just looking at individual talent. They're thinking about position needs, team chemistry, and how all the pieces fit together. It's like putting together a puzzle where every piece has to be perfect. This system is a game changer for up-and-coming stars. Imagine being the next big thing in college basketball, breaking records left and right, but still not making the cut for Team USA. It's not just about being good anymore. It's about fitting into a very specific plan. And let's be real, this isn't just about Clark. This is about every future star who dreams of wearing that USA jersey. The path to Olympic glory just got a whole lot trickier. It's not enough to be the best in college or even the WNBA. You've got to be the right player at the right time for Team USA's strategy. So what does this mean for women's basketball? It's changing the game in ways we never expected. Players might start tailoring their skills to fit what the Olympic team needs, not just what makes them stand out. And fans, we might need to rethink how we judge who deserves a spot on that roster. But here's the million-dollar question. Is this system fair? On one hand, it ensures we're sending the best possible team to represent the USA. On the other, it might mean leaving some of the most exciting players at home. It's a tough call, and it's got everyone from coaches to fans debating what's best for the sport.
USA Basketball has reportedly finalized the women's team for the Paris Olympics, and a name not on there, surprisingly to many, Caitlyn Clark.
That is Caitlyn Clark being snubbed from the 2024 Olympic team, pretty much for no reason whatsoever.
While fans debate the fairness, one voice has been surprisingly quiet. How did Caitlyn Clark, the player at the center of this storm, actually react to being left off Team USA? Her response might shock you. You'd think Caitlyn Clark would be devastated, right? Missing out on the Olympics is a big deal. But here's the crazy part. Clark's not even mad about it. She's taking this whole situation and turning it into rocket fuel for her career. When asked about not making the team, Clark dropped this bomb. I think it just gives you something to work for. Hopefully one day I can be there. I think it's just a little more motivation. Can you believe that?
Honestly, no disappointment. Like, I think it just gives you something to work for. You know, that's a dream. You know, hopefully one day I can be there.
Instead of throwing a fit, she's using this as a chance to level up her game even more. But let's talk about what's really wild here. While Clark's sitting on the sidelines for the Olympics, she's absolutely crushing it in the WNBA. It's like she's out there every game saying, "Hey, Olympic Committee, you sure about that decision?" Her performance is so hot, it's making fans wonder if the selection process needs a serious overhaul. Now you might be thinking, okay, but what about 2028? Well, that's where things get even more interesting. Clark's not just eyeing a spot on that team, she's gunning to be the star. With the way she's playing now and her attitude about this whole situation, it's like she's building her own hype train for the next Olympics. Here's what's really mind-blowing. Clark's reaction is changing how people look at Olympic snubs. Instead of it being this career-ending thing, she's turning it into a stepping stone. It's like she's rewriting the playbook on how to handle disappointment in sports. But let's not forget why this is such a big deal. Clark isn't just any player, she's a game changer. Fans were going crazy about her potentially being on the Olympic team because they know she brings something special to the court. Her absence from the team isn't just about one player missing out, it's about the potential impact on the whole Olympic basketball experience. Think about it. Clark's popularity is through the roof. People who've never watched a WNBA game in their lives are tuning in just to see her play. Imagine what she could have done for Olympic viewership. It's not just about the games, it's about growing the sport and getting more eyes on women's basketball. And here's where it gets really interesting. Remember how Cheryl Reeve was all over the place with her comments about Clark? At first she was like, hey, she's okay, but then later she had to admit that Clark's bringing some serious excitement to the game. It's like even the coach who supposedly didn't have a say in picking the team can't ignore what Clark's doing. So what does all this mean for women's basketball? It's like Clark is single-handedly changing the game, both on and off the court. She's showing that it's not just about making one team or winning one tournament. It's about the long game, about constantly improving and using every experience, good or bad, to get better. Clark's handling the snub like a champ, but the internet? Not so much. Reeve's decision unleashed a firestorm that's threatening to burn down women's basketball as we know it. How bad did it get? Let's just say Reeve had to go into digital hiding. You think you've seen fan outrage before? This is next level. When the news broke that Caitlyn Clark wasn't on the Olympic roster, it was like someone threw a match into a powder keg. Suddenly, everyone from die-hard WNBA fans to casual sports watchers was up in arms. Social media exploded with hashtags, memes, and angry tweets. It was a full-on backlash tsunami, and Cheryl Reeve was right in the middle of it. Now, here's where things get wild. Reeve, who we now know didn't even have the final say in the team selection.
Because you're on the committee, so how do you not have no power on it? Let's dive a little deeper into this article. Team USA head coach Cheryl Reeve. Now, we know Cheryl Reeve has pretty much been silent about this whole situation. A lot of people have been waiting to hear from Cheryl Reeve.
Found herself taking the heat for the entire decision. She said she was taking a bullet for USA basketball. Can you imagine being in her shoes? One minute you're coaching the best women's basketball team in the world, the next you're public enemy number one. The backlash was so intense that Reeve had to make her social media accounts private. That's right, she literally had to hide from the internet. It's like she went from being the coach of Team USA to being on some kind of bizarre witness protection program, all because of one player not making the cut. But it wasn't just random fans losing their minds. Even big names in women's basketball were questioning the decision. It's like the entire sport was divided overnight. You had people arguing about talent versus experience, star power versus team chemistry. It was chaos, and everyone had an opinion. And Reeve? She wasn't exactly helping her case. In a press conference, she dropped this bomb. I don't give two STs about fan support for opposing teams. Yikes. It's like she was trying to put out a fire with gasoline. That comment just made people even angrier, wondering if she was out of touch with what fans really want. Here's the crazy part. This whole controversy might actually change how Olympic teams are picked in the future. People are calling for more transparency, more fan input, maybe even a completely new selection process. It's like Clark's snub opened up this whole can of worms that nobody can close. Think about it. What if future Olympic teams had to consider not just who plays well together, but who the fans want to see? It could totally change the game. You might see younger stars getting spots over veterans, or players with big social media followings making the cut. It's a whole new world. But here's the million-dollar question. Is all this drama good or bad for women's basketball? On one hand, it's got more people talking about the sport than ever before. On the other, it's creating these huge divisions in the fan base. It's like the sport is getting more popular, but also more controversial at the same time. And let's not forget about the players caught in the middle of all this. Imagine making the Olympic team, something you've dreamed about your whole life, and then having people say you don't deserve to be there.
Instead of her influence in picking the squad for the 2024 Olympic Games as the admission of Indiana Fever rookie Caitlyn Clark.
It's gotta be tough on the players who did make the cut, feeling like they have to justify their spots. Speaking of justifying spots, let's talk about the real elephant in the room. Is it time to shake up the entire system? The Clark snub isn't just about one player. It's sparking a debate that could redefine women's basketball as we know it. Think about it. On one side, you've got seasoned veterans like Diana Taurasi. She's been there, done that, and has the gold medals to prove it. But on the other side, you've got rising stars like Caitlyn Clark, breaking records and bringing in new fans left and right. It's like a clash between the old guard and the new school, and it's got everyone talking. Here's what's wild. The Olympic roster is stacked with experienced players. It's like they're going for the if it ain't broke, don't fix it approach. But is that really the best move for the sport? Some fans are saying it's time to mix things up, bring in some fresh faces, and maybe even change how teams are picked. Now you might be thinking, but experience matters in big tournaments. And you're not wrong. Players like Taurasi have been there before. They know how to handle the pressure. But here's the thing. The game is changing. It's faster, more dynamic, and players like Clark are bringing a whole new energy to the court. So what's the real impact of favoring experience over new talent? For starters, it might be slowing down the growth of the sport. Imagine if Clark was on that Olympic team. You'd have millions of new fans tuning in, people who've never watched women's basketball before. That's huge for growing the game.
Caitlyn Clark pretty much set y'all league on fire, got everybody a big payday, and the future looked very bright for the WNBA.
But it's not just about viewership, it's about inspiring the next generation. When young players see someone like Clark making it to the Olympics, it shows them what's possible. It's like saying, hey, you can be the future of this sport too. Without that, we might be missing out on some serious talent down the line. Now let's talk about what this means for women's basketball as a whole. This controversy, it's not just about one team or one tournament. It's about the direction of the entire sport. Are we going to stick with what's worked in the past, or are we ready to embrace change and see where it takes us? So Jen Rosati, who's on the selection committee, said something interesting. She talked about how they look at how a player would impact the team's play. But here's the question. Are they considering the impact on the sport as a whole? Because let's be real, players like Clark aren't just changing games, they're changing the entire landscape of women's basketball. And you know what's crazy? This whole situation might actually lead to some big changes. Fans are getting more vocal about what they want to see. They're not just accepting decisions anymore. They're questioning them, debating them, and demanding explanations. That's new, and it's powerful. So what does all this mean for the future? We might see a totally different approach to picking Olympic teams. Maybe there'll be more transparency in the selection process. Or maybe they'll start considering things like a player's impact on growing the sport, not just their on-court skills. But here's the million-dollar question. Is women's basketball ready for this kind of change? Because let's face it, shaking up a system that's brought home gold medals isn't an easy decision. It's like trying to fix a car while it's still running. Risky, but potentially game-changing. Alright, let's break down what just happened here. The Olympic selection process isn't what we thought it was, and it's causing some serious waves in women's basketball. Cheryl Reeve dropping that bombshell about not having a say? That's huge. This whole Caitlyn Clark situation might actually change how teams are picked in the future. Fans are demanding more transparency, and who knows, we might see a totally different approach next time around. But here's the real question. Is women's basketball ready for this kind of shakeup? It's not just about one player or one team anymore. We're talking about the future of the sport. Will they stick with experience, or will they start giving new stars a shot at Olympic glory? Whatever happens, one thing's for sure. Women's basketball is never going to be the same after this.